So, who took the Steelers logo and colours and put it on the New York Jets? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. I know, a Browns fan talking shit about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Surprise, surprise. So if you're a Browns fan, strap in, grab some popcorn, enjoy the ride. If you're a Steelers fan that somehow clicks on this, nothing personal, but, fuck the Steelers. And the reason I want to talk about the Steelers is because obviously they've been in the news recently with some of the moves that they've made. And it's kind of just basically put the cherry on top of my kind of what on earth is going on over there in Pittsburgh thought process this off-season. First and foremost, it just doesn't feel like it's the most un-Steelers off-season. Like they just, they don't usually operate like this. Trading for DK Metcalf, of course, signing Aaron Rodgers, trading for Jalen Ramsey, trading for Jonnu Smith, nonetheless, making all of these kind of free agent moves. That's not usually something they go out and do. Well, not in recent years, especially. So, it feels like the most kind of un-Steelers thing. And the moves that they have made and, the kind of direction they've taken this off-season, coming off a season, but every other season that we've seen from Pittsburgh in the last, decades, which is 9-8, maybe make the playoffs if they do lose in the first round. So, everyone, even Steelers fans, probably at this point, a lot of them wanting to, not blow it up, but, kind of take steps towards that in a sense, and kind of, stripping it down and rebuilding it a little bit. Yes, the Steelers continue to refuse to do that. But I feel like this is kind of their, magnus opus of that refusal by just essentially going all in on a bunch of older guys, shall we say, to give them some credit. Yes, players that have been successful in their career. We're talking about some pretty talented players, especially Aaron Rodgers. Arguably some people would say he's the best thrower of the football ever. Do you know what I mean? All these arguments people have made for Aaron Rodgers. Yes, he's 40 years old, but he's still a big name. So, it's just been it's been an odd off season for the Steelers, and B, I just don't really get what they're doing because, as I said, me as a Browns fan looking at it, it just screams not blow it up, but blow it up in a sense. They went into this off season needing a quarterback. They decided to, bring Mason Rudolph back and then, pass on any of the quarterbacks in the draft until the 6th round and drafted Will Howard, which, as much as Ohio State fans, myself included, I am a Ohio State fan, but not someone that does this. But, as all the Ohio State fans that want to tell you that Will Howard, is going to be a great player in the NFL, he's still a 6th round pick. And there's a reason he went in the 6th round in terms of the evaluation from NFL teams. So, clearly not a substantial investment into the position from the Steelers up until the point where obviously they got involved in the Aaron Rodgers situation. So, at first, they kind of teased it. I thought maybe this would be the year they'll just kind of, roll out the year with a Mason Rudolph, maybe let a couple of guys go, and kind of, target quarterback next year with a higher draft pick. But still, I suppose in the back of your mind, you thought it is Mike Tomlin. He could probably still somehow go 9-8 with Mason Rudolph and some of the players on that team. But nonetheless, so that just obviously goes to how they've then operated this off season, which just every kind of move has confused me in a sense of, not confused me in a sense, you're bringing in these players, I understand it, but it's just furthered that point of like, well, why are you doing this? Like, why are you going all in on a bunch of older veteran players as if you're like, I don't know, like, maybe Washington or like a Ravens or the Bills, a team that is genuinely on the cusp, shall we say. Well, you can argue that amongst those teams, but and bringing in, reinforcing and bringing in some veteran, good players to kind of reinforce that Super Bowl push. But you're doing it as a team that, has had no playoff success, and as I said, in the last decade. You're doing it as a team that no one coming off of last year was talking about going to win a Super Bowl next year. The majority of people, as I said, were talking about why you should blow this up in a sense. And you've gone, you've not only gone no like you usually do, which, wouldn't have surprised me. You've just gone no and done something that the Steelers don't really do in my mind, and, just signed all of these older guys. So, do they think it will work? The reaction I've seen from, any Browns fan on social media, of course, is going to have, see a lot of Steelers stuff and have interactions with Steelers fans, as they always seem to find a way over here, and we always seem to find a way over there. But seeing most of their thing, it seems mostly positive. They seem to think. I mean, I've seen, a lot of them think they're going to win the Super Bowl. So clearly, some of they think that they think it's a good idea and it's going to work. But personally, I don't see this working, which is why I don't understand why to do it. The best case scenario in this situation, in my opinion, is 9-8 again, and you lose in the first round of the playoffs. Maybe just maybe, if you get a good matchup in the playoffs, you might finally win a playoff game. But I just don't understand. It doesn't take your ceiling high enough because you weren't you weren't good enough before you signed all these players. As I said, maybe it would make more sense if they were a team that was on the cusp, and you're bringing in, obviously you wouldn't be on the cusp and need a quarterback, but some of the other guys that they brought in, but they weren't one of those teams. So to go and do it, just as I said, confused me, and I don't really think it will work. In my opinion, the Steelers have needed to bottom out for years, to be honest. They just kept churning out these 9-8 seasons, and they just refuse to bottom out. And as I said, this is like now their magnum opus of refusal, and it's just they've just put the cherry on top of the we're not doing it, but also done it in a way that I think other years you could maybe make an argument for. This year, I think not. This was the year to not bottom out, but maybe not try as hard to go and get that 9-8 season, and maybe get a better draft pick. And that's obviously the plan. What a lot of people seem to think is the target quarterback next year. That's you're only bringing in Aaron Rodgers for 1 year, so why would put yourself in a better position, shall we say? Not saying tanking, but just putting yourself in a better position to do that. So as I said, that they needed to bottom out. They needed to bottom out this year, in my opinion. And they've just completely refused to do that, and done it in a way that is unlike them, and in a way that I don't think will work, and just don't really understand. And whilst I say I don't understand, I suppose, whilst in a microscopic sense, shall we say, I can just about see the logic in what they're doing in regards to this year. In terms of bringing these people, if they really are just that proud of their winning records streak and want to just go 9-8, I get it. Obviously, I'm joking. I can maybe understand that they actually think they could win a challenge, or at least win some playoff games, and that's why they're doing this. But then every time I then bring it up on social media, or I see interactions on social media, see things about it, or to any Steelers fans that I know personally. As I kind of mentioned, they tell me that the plan, has always been to target quarterback in 2026. That's what the moves they made is setting themselves up to do that. And this is just that kind of final push, for a Super Bowl right now, with the kind of core players they have, mainly on defense, but some of those players that are getting a little bit older but still on the in their prime, which then. That just makes me wonder, if that was the case, then why would you, as I kind of mentioned earlier, why would you take every step in making that more difficult by just striving to go 9-8, losing the first round of the playoffs and get the 21st pick in the draft? It's going to be quite hard to target quarterback in the draft from that position. They'll say, you can trade up and all of that stuff, but firstly, good luck trading up from 21. And secondly, I say this to any team really. This isn't Madden where you can just force trades. Anytime there's talk about the whole like trading up in the draft to get a quarterback, we can just trade up in the draft. This isn't Madden. You can't just, as I said, force the trades. If quarterback needy teams have the top picks in the draft, which is more than likely because they're usually the teams that are not as successful in the NFL. That's why you need a quarterback, the most important position in sports. Then why on earth would they trade that pick away to you, and especially to 21, where they have absolutely no chance of getting any of the top prospects? So it's just a flawed blueprint, and at this point that just feels like coping for me. That just feels like Steelers fans are, just saying that because they don't actually believe in what they're doing this year, and they just, they hope that next year they're in a position to target a quarterback. And as I said, this is you're taking every step to avoid that. I just don't understand the thinking behind going all in on a bunch of, as I said, older vets for 1 year. When you're in Pittsburgh position, and I'm even more confused, as I said, by the idea that it's all part of the bigger plan to draft their franchise quarterback next year. That just doesn't add up. That doesn't make much sense to me. This is not me shitting on Steelers fans. This is me shitting on the Steelers. Any Steelers fans, I'm sure there might be a couple that watch this. I doubt they get it to this far in the video, but I'm happy to listen to any of your ideas of what you think this is, what they're doing. But just as an outside view and as a Browns fan, it just doesn't really make any sense to me. And if I was in Pittsburgh position, I wouldn't. Whilst yes, I suppose in the social media world, the Browns, if we're in their position, they traded for a Jalen Ramsey and signed out. Of course, you're going to make people are going to get excited about it and that kind of stuff just because of the names, as I said, but when you actually kind of strip it back and look at the state of the roster, look at the state going forward and think, why are we doing this? That it doesn't make as much sense. So, as I said, shitting on the Steelers, not Steelers fans. It's never personal. As I said, let me know if you disagree. I'm sure you will, and why that is, because I am genuinely interested to know. Because as I said, I have no idea. Don't understand what they're doing. Feels like a very it feels like a situation that's incredibly set up to fail. Everyone brings up the 2011 Eagles when talking about them. I kind of look at this as you look at the last team that Aaron Rodgers just went to, the Jets. Obviously, a completely different situation in terms of organizational perspective. The Jets are a fraction of what the Steelers are in terms of success in the recent decades. So. Obviously, it's a different perspective from that, but in terms of him joining a team that, yes, has some good players on it, their best part about him is their defense, shall we say, and Aaron Rodgers is coming in, and all this excitement and all of this stuff, and they win what? He wins like a combined 12 games in 2 years, and it doesn't go very well. This just feels like it's a recipe to all just fail, and I've mentioned in other videos and other things that I've done that I think this, the Aaron Rodgers signing might be the final thing that breaks the Mike Tomlin streak, because I just feel like the Aaron Rodgers juju will overpower the Mike Tomlin juju, and this will finally be the year for him. So it just feels like a situation that's set up to fail. It felt like that when they brought in Aaron Rodgers anyway. And then, obviously, with the signings they've made since then, it's just furthered that to me. And it's just, with every trade and every signing, I'm like, I just think, what are you doing? I don't understand it. But obviously, we will see. I could be proven completely wrong. I could be sat here with egg on my face. Come next January and February, and the Steelers are one of the best teams in the NFL, and going and winning playoff games. And I'll admit that I was wrong, but just from my perspective now, looking at the Steelers, I don't really understand what they're trying to do from an organisational perspective. I understand what they're trying to do from an on the field perspective. They brought in while an older Aaron Rodgers. He's you're never going to lose the mental side of it with the game. Well, obviously at one point, if you're still playing at maybe 75, shall we say, but while playing in that kind of age group, you're still always going to have that mental side of it. You're always still going to have that ability in terms of being able to process defenses and stuff, and having that. They brought in Jonu Smith to pair with Pat Frymouth. They're clearly going to run a lot of 12 personnel. They've obviously got Jalen Warren, drafted one of my favourite running backs this year, Caleb Johnson. They're going to run the ball, play action. It's quite obvious what they're going to do on the field, but in terms of off the field, shall we say, organisational direction and where they're going and what they're the bigger picture, just don't quite understand it from my perspective. But as I said, if you're a Steelers fan that watched it to this far in the video, which I highly doubt, let me know what you think what they're doing, because as I said, I'm interested to know, because I have no idea. Obviously TJ Watt still hasn't signed an extension. That's still ongoing in Pittsburgh, which is obviously music to all of us Browns fans' ears. All the reports about how he wants Myles Garrett money, they think that that's too much, and that's a precedent that, like the Deshaun Watson thing, that people shouldn't kind of look at, because that's just the Browns doing what they do. But TJ Watt's like, nope, I want my money, and they still haven't got to an agreement. They've brought in these other players. Jalen Ramsey's getting a lot of money this year. Aaron Rodgers is getting a lot of money this year. DJ Metcalf's getting a lot of money this year. They've managed to invest money in other areas of the team, but so from TJ Watt, with every other signing and every other penny that gets spent elsewhere, you could get more and more annoyed and think, why am I still not locked up long term? So a situation that at first I thought, it was just purely just media kind of sensationalizing it. It was obviously going to end up signing it, but at this point it's gone quite long into the off season. He still hasn't signed, and you never know. So we'll have to wait and see what goes on with that. And then if they do end up trading him, that would make absolutely that would just be the cherry on top of all of this, because it's like, well, right, so this 1 year that you wanted to go all in before you apparently wanted to target a quarterback next year, you then trade away your best player on your team while also doing that. That just makes no fucking sense at all. So that would just be even more hilarious if that is what they ended up doing. So as I said, we'll wait and see. But how do I think it will unfold? I'm sure the media are loving it. NFL media are loving it. A lot of big names on this Steelers team. Steelers fans, I'm sure a lot of them, while some I'm sure I have seen probably have a similar perspective from me in terms of what the fuck are we doing. A lot of them are excited. We'll see how it obviously unfolds. If I'm wrong, I'll admit it, but this has a recipe for disaster for me, and I just don't quite understand the thought process of what they're trying to do. But that would do it for me today, guys. I do apologise for the late kind of time in between videos. I am a massive idiot. Left my laptop at my brother's house over the weekend, so I was only just able to get it back today. So I do apologise. Won't happen again. I will assure it. So back to my kind of regular, every 2-3 days. Now I have my laptop and ability to actually record these videos. So as I said, thanks again for watching. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free, but it really, really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. As I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy, because I'm talking to the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing rest of the week, I suppose. Friday tomorrow. Have a great weekend. Fuck the Steelers, but most importantly, go Browns.